Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by with the new Season 1 Reloaded update in Black Ops 6 and Warzone. They actually went through and updated some of your settings in game, particularly when it comes to your controller and your aiming settings. And so with that today, I wanted to go through and break down the newly updated best controller settings to be using, primarily focusing on Warzone, but we'll also mention some things you want to pay attention to for multiplayer as well. So diving right in, when you open up your controller settings tab now, you might notice some things are going to be a little bit different here. First and foremost, obviously you're going to have your aiming input device on controller, since these are controller settings. For button layout, this is largely staying the same, right? Personally, I just straight up play on tactical. That way I can use my scuff paddles on the back of my controller. I've got my melee there. I can slide with my right thumbstick. The easiest way to really set up the true best input and keybinds here is to just go through and customize these as you want. If you want your lethal equipment to be bound to something other than right bumper, you can just manually change that, unless there's a preset, like for instance for me, tactical, that just automatically does whatever you need to swap there. So pretty straightforward. Like I said, nothing really changing with that. Stick layout preset I still keep as default. Now, one of the biggest changes with this update that you'll notice is your sensitivity. You're probably opening this up going, wait a second, 1.9, 1.8, I was on a 10 yesterday, I was on an 11 yesterday, and that's because they've actually gone through and completely redone the sensitivity scaling. Why, you may ask? I don't know. Did this need to be a change? Probably not. Is it a change? Yes. And now the scaling is completely different. I'll throw up a graph on screen now of basically how the values convert from one versus the other. So with this, for instance, I was playing predominantly on an 8.7 here in Warzone, or a 9.8 over in multiplayer, and now those values transfer to a 1.8 and a 1.9. But essentially what this allows you to do is fine tune your sensitivity even more. Rather than only having the values of 1, 2, 3, 4, those just straight up numbers, we now can go through and fine tune and adjust this if you wanted to. So for instance, I'm at a 1.9 and a 1.8, right? I do play slightly staggered here. I'm moving a little bit more horizontally than I am vertically. But if I wanted to adjust this super precisely, if you have a keyboard and mouse plugged in, keep in mind, you could go through and you could actually type in, I want a 1.85. So it'll be like in between a 7 and an 8 there, or an 8 and a 9 for your sensitivity. So you can fine tune this a little bit more. For the most part, if you were already comfortable running your 8.7 before, the default values should switch over. If they didn't, obviously that graph will help you readjust to where you need to be. But I think this is something that is absolutely worth going through and maybe testing around a little bit, fine tuning just a tad bit more if you want to play staggered, if you want to play even to the 2, and seeing if maybe there is a noticeable difference in your gameplay, whether you're on 2 even or 2.2 or 1.8. This is something worth going through and testing around for sure. Easiest way to do this, if you have multiplayer, jump into a private match, set up a bunch of bots, go through and just shoot them and test your sensitivities, see what feels the best for you. In Warzone, you could just go into the firing range if you really wanted to, or like boot camp or plunder could be ideal for that too. But definitely want to mess around with that. If you're sticking on like that general medium sensitivity, which I'd always personally advise, you're going to want to probably hover around a 1.8 to a 2 overall. Simplified controls and all the presets here I leave on off, bumper ping off, and I don't swap my bumpers and my triggers there. Vibration, I don't want that on. Obviously, I always recommend to turn this off just because precise aiming matters, and when you're trying to be super precise and your controller is shaking around as you're shooting, it might throw you off a little bit. So I definitely keep that off. If you have a controller that has trigger effects like haptics on PlayStation 5, you'll have this setting. I don't want that on either, so I do turn that off. Deadzone still super important here. If you want to go through and fully test your dead zone, turn right stick and left stick min to 0, and then turn on this test, and you'll start to see if there's input going on. Like my left stick has a decent bit of stick drift, 5%, and kind of hovers around 1%. Then as I move my sticks here as well, you'll notice as I place them back, it'll still show up. So like my right stick doesn't really have that much dead zone, surprisingly enough, but my left stick does. That said, leaving your left stick dead zone on is actually a good thing, which I know sounds crazy, but hear me out. When your left stick senses input like it does, as you'll see when I start pressing things, obviously, that means that my rotational aim assist that only activates when your left stick has input is kind of always on in a sense, meaning even in situations where I'm not fully prepared to have that rotational aim assist kick in, it's going to be active. So having a little bit of left stick drift is actually a bit of an advantage in some situations. I also drop my left stick max down to 60 just so I can get the full reach of my thumbstick without having to actually use the full reach of my thumbstick. And then also on my right stick max, I leave that as 90 currently. I've started messing around at this, and 90 felt like the sweet spot for me. Another big thing too though, turn your left trigger and your right trigger sensitivities down to 0. That way the second you hit that actuation point, you'll start shooting your gun. There's never going to be a delay there. So definitely turn that stuff off. We then go over into our aiming settings here, and the multipliers, curiously enough, all this stuff is going to be staying the same despite the fact that we ended up having those big sensitivity adjustments, obviously with our base sensitivity. So the third person, the vehicle stuff, I leave all that by default. My ADS sensitivity multiplier, I actually use a custom one, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. But like I said, pretty much all that is left is just the default numbers. There's standard looking version. Then we get into our aiming advanced settings here. So looking version still is all going to be standard. The transition timing though, with this custom sensitivity per zoom, I have on instant. So the second that I start to ADS, my sensitivity will change to all these custom sensitivities. So I'm still keeping with what I was rocking before, just because I didn't really adjust my true sensitivity. I'm going straight over with the value of 8.7 being 1.8, 1.9. But if you do adjust those sensitivities and you lower it or raise it with those new values, you probably want to adjust these in the same way. Your lower zooms you typically want to have on a lower value, so you'll be more precise in those situations. But the more zoom in you have, obviously the higher your sense needs to be, so you can continue to trace players. Obviously the more zoomed in you are, the slower it's going to be to pan left, right, up, and down. So that's why I gradually increase over time. If you want the exact approximate values like 0.83 instead of just the increments of 5, again, you have to put in a keyboard and actually type in those exact values. But yeah, you definitely want to focus on that too. Like I said, if you've adjusted your sensitivity with those new values. Third person correction type, I keep on assist, and my aim response curve type still is currently dynamic. Then I don't adjust the slope scale. It's been tested quite a bit that doing this is really only going to make things a little bit awkward for you if you're already familiar with dynamic or linear or this, that. There's sort of a muscle memory built into what you're probably already used to with dynamic or with linear, so I personally don't adjust that. You could fine tune it a little bit, but for 99.9% of players, it's really not going to make an actual true difference. I've tested out, you know, linear with 0 slope scale, dynamic with half, and truly just leaving it at 1 is what I felt the best on. Obviously aim assist we're keeping on there. Then I don't mess with any of the motion behavior stuff, because this is like the gyro aiming, and I obviously don't use that. Most players probably won't use this, so no real need to dive deep into that. And by the way, as we are breaking down all the settings here today, if you find the video helpful or if you simply enjoy it, a like rating is always seriously appreciated. And if you're new to the channel, you want to guarantee that every single day you're in the know for all things you need to know for Call of Duty, Black Ops 6, Warzone, you name it, it's all right here. So feel free to hit that subscribe button, turn on those post notifications, and join us on the road to 1 million subscribers. We're trying to hit that before the end of 2024. Next up here with movement, tac sprint assist, obviously a very important thing here with the delay. Most players will just leave this at 0. If you have a keyboard to plug in and actually type this out, if you're playing on console, or obviously if you're on PC, it's probably already there. Putting this at 1 or 2 like we have since launch has actually felt pretty consistent for me. I don't really notice any issues there where my tac sprint's feeling delayed or feeling clunky or something. So I've left that on 1 and I've had no problems with that. Sprint sideways and backwards, I do keep on with those assists. I don't have any mantle or crouch assists on, and I don't have corner slice on, just because this has, in my opinion, even though the note says corner slice does not affect your aim, the visuals on it do at some times kind of throw me off, because it's almost like you're leaning in a sense when you go to approach a corner. I just feel like my centering is better when I turn that corner slice off. Tap to slide is what I have on for my slide and dive behavior, because I have a medium delay here, so I can pretty much always know when I'm going to be sliding or when I need to dive. I can just hold my stick in a little bit longer. I don't have to worry about accidentally diving in some situations because it's too fast or something. And personally, I'm just not a big fan of hybrid. I found myself to accidentally dive a lot there. So tap to slide is going to give you the most responsive slide cancel while still being in control of your dive if you want to utilize that. Sprint restore I have on. Slide maintain sprint I also have on, because this is going to help out with dead slides. You're not going to notice these nearly as much if you turn this on, so definitely pay attention to that. Parachute automatic behavior I have on off. I don't want my parachute to auto deploy for me in any situation. At times I may hit the ground, but it'll be because of my own doing, and I can also, in most of the time, you know, ideally land quicker than my opponents who do have this on. I don't want my mantling canceling my reload. I don't want to mantle at all in most cases, so I leave that off. For the advanced settings here, my sprint behavior on toggle, move forward is off, auto door peek off, grounded mantle off, definitely, because that at times will accidentally mantle you in a situation where you might just like be trying to jump shot or something. Single tap sprint, free look on plunging underwater, and then sprinting door bash definitely have on just so I can obviously get through doors a little bit easier with that. Then the vehicle advanced settings, I pretty much just leave all these on the default. Not super important here unless you are seriously focused on vehicular gameplay, right? But I find the default controls there to be just fine. Hey everyone, really quickly wanted to give a big shout out to my friends over at Gamer Advantage. Every single time I'm doing a face cam video here on the channel, obviously I am rocking my Gamer Advantage frames. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Out of everything in my setup on a day-to-day basis, these are what make the biggest difference. They allow me to look at screens all day long, whether I'm working on content, content, editing videos, you know, playing the games, whatever the case is. These are keeping me headache free. They're letting me sleep better at night, reducing my eye strain. They are absolutely incredible. And this applies to you as well. If you are at work looking at screens all day, you're at school doing the same, or you're playing games, maybe creating your own content even, cannot recommend Gamer Advantage glasses enough. They got plenty of different colorways and frame options to fit your style. They offer prescription and regular lenses, so quite literally something for everyone. And if you ever want to get a pair for yourself, toss in code WHosImmortal at checkout and you'll get yourself a nice little discount. Link for that will be down in the description below. Lastly, we get into combat here. So ADS behavior, default there on a hold tac stance behavior. I have on a toggle just so I'll never accidentally toggle that. Tac stance activation is going to be that ADS and down button again, just so I don't ever accidentally get into that. My weapon mounts, ADS and melee, I'm comfortable and used to that, so feel free to stick with that if you're already familiar with it. If you want to change it to something else that's more comfortable for you, feel free to do so. It's more of a preference one there. Hold melee to get my dedicated melee out. I like to prioritize the body shield more than finishing moves just because I can always cancel having a meat shield up. You can't cancel a finishing move, so if you had to get out of it, the body shield might save you there. Apply all on armor plates, obviously, just so I can just press it once and get through that, and then I can always cancel that if I need. 1x1 on the C4 detonation. I don't always need to throw 2 to do what I need to do in that situation, so just having it singular there is obviously much more efficient. Equipment behaviors, hold manual fire is press. For the combat advanced settings, I leave a lot of this on default for the most part. My sprint and focus is going to change my zoom activation. My weapon mount exit's going to be a short delay there. Prioritize interact is obviously the way to go for Warzone, so you can single tap to open chests, open doors to loot, everything like that. It's not going to slow down your gameplay at all. However, in multiplayer, you probably want to focus on like a tap to reload scenario or a prioritize reload scenario there instead. Sprint cancels reload I have on off. I want to be able to tac sprint in full while reloading, and that can actually thwart that at times, so you don't want that on. Akimbo I have on paired, so I just have to press one trigger and both my weapons will shoot. ADS stick swap off, depleted ammo weapon switch off. That's mostly a preference thing there. The overlay stuff is going to be pretty much all default here as well. I don't really mess with any of that. However, it is important to note, at least before Season 1 Reloaded, they didn't mention directly in the patch notes if they have fixed this, it'd be a secret change, but your ping wheel delay can actually sometimes cause you not to call in streaks. If you have this turned off, you might not be able to use your kill streaks. You want to set this to moderate, and that should resolve any issues potentially going on with that. So super weird bug, but something you actually want to pay attention to there. That being said, those are the newly updated controller settings, and definitely some emphasis there on the sensitivity. Hopefully this video helped you out. If it did, a like on your way out would be seriously appreciated. And of course, if you want to stay up to date with the latest news, updates, patch notes, meta breakdowns, everything going on in COD, this is the place to be. Feel free to hit that subscribe button and turn on those post notifications. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you later. Peace out.